And can you say just something more, because when I've just done your course where you know take a really deep delve into AMH and explaining it. But what I found really interesting is like your explanation as to what AMH is actually measuring, because this idea that it equates to the number of eggs left is a bit confusing, I think, and isn't always the case.
Yeah, AMH. So basically, AMH is a hormone that's produced by small growing follicles. So it's not being produced by your primordial pool, like this kind of massive non-growing dormant follicles that have been sitting in your system since you were in uterus. It's not measuring that. It's not actually particularly, AMH isn't really being produced by the hormone, the follicles that are growing in this menstrual month, in any particular, so not the antral follicles, the big guys. It's being produced by all the small antral follicles and the preantral follicles. Preantral is just it's a term that describes follicles before the antrums. The antrum is like a fluid-filled pocket that appears in a follicle about a month before ovulation. So the pre-antral follicles, which are about sort of 2 or 3 months worth of early follicular growth, and the small antral follicles produce AMH. Most of our AMH is produced by the small antral follicles because they are so much bigger than the pre-antral follicles. They've reached a kind of size and a complexity and layers of these granulosa cells that produce AMH, so they pump out the majority of it, the lion's share of it. So when you're measuring AMH, you're getting a pretty good idea of how many small antral follicles there are. So then how many antral follicles you would expect for that person. Even that, though, is not absolutely set in stone. There are variations on that. Some people may make more granulosa cells than others because of issues with blood circulation, because of issues with insulin resistance, because of issues which maybe affect the blood supply and the circulation just around the ovary itself. So it could be sort of tensions and torsions within the lower pelvis. So then you're looking at things like pelvic osteopathy, visceral osteopathy type work to see what's going on in there. So there's all sorts of reasons why maybe there will be less granulosa cells within the follicles, within the ovaries, which can mean that you produce less AMH than would be expected for your antral follicle count. So AMH and antral follicle count don't always marry up, but they do sometimes. Well, they do mostly. About 80% of the time they will marry up. So that's kind of what you're measuring. You're measuring how many of your follicles have survived to that point.